Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week I'm back with another product review. Today we're looking at R&F Pigment Sticks. Stick around. So what exactly is a pigment stick? Well, put simply, what R&F calls their pigment sticks is an oil stick. It's essentially oil paint as it would exist in a tube, but with a little added beeswax to make it a stick form. The R&F sticks are handmade paints. Company was founded, I think, only maybe 20 or so years ago. The sticks themselves come in a variety of widths and sizes. I can't remember what this one is, but this is sort of the standard. You can find packs of half sticks. You can also find even bigger, thicker sticks, by comparison. And apparently there's one that's called the Giant that's even bigger than this. So what would an artist use the pigment sticks for? Well, I mean, it's oil paint. You can use it for any other application of oil paint that you might expect. But the sticks offer something a little bit different. First, I find that the sticks are really good for sketching out a loose composition on your canvas or wood panel or whatever you happen to be working on, really, in order to give yourself a general idea of where things are before you pick up the brush. In that sense, I actually use them in a similar way to the way I might use paint markers for an acrylic piece. These sticks are also very popular with abstract and non-objective painters because they don't need a brush whatsoever. And actually, I would say that if you have certain physical limitations and can't hold a brush with precision for whatever reason, these kind of eliminate this. You could probably, in many ways, literally tape this to the end of your hand and tape it onto your hand and just use your arm. They're that easy to use. And because I just mentioned they're just like other oils with a little bit of wax added, you can mix them with a knife, you can mix them with your other paints, you can brush apply them, you can do all the traditional techniques, but the thing is you don't necessarily have to because you don't need all that other stuff if it's just right here. Plus the addition of the wax to the paint creates a unique textural component that you can't really find with other paints. For my own work, I actually use the sticks to lay down sort of more of that abstract-y base color, just smear some color around, let it dry completely, throw on an isolation coat, and actually we'll go back in with acrylics on top of that. Now, a lot of people say you shouldn't really layer acrylics over oils, but with enough isolation layers, there's no problem. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm doing that, I'm probably putting down a thick application of an acrylic gel to fill in all of those textural gaps before I come on top with acrylics. Now, the big question I'm sure on your mind, because they're oils, is what's the dry time like? Because, I mean, yeah. Well, I do want to say that you can pick up this blending stick with dryer. It's really useful. It's great for honestly mixing your colors together so you're not wasting as much of them, because these sticks do tend to wear down pretty quick. Although for my test run, I forgot I had this. Because it's all covered in other paint colors, I thought it was a different color. So for my test runs, I actually I put it away, didn't I? The Gamlen's Galkid gel for a accelerated drying time experience, and it makes more sense across the board when mixed with other paints, as you'll see. So for this test, I took the R&F stick, Williamsburg oils, Blue Ridge oils, Utrecht, Gamlen, and Rembrandt oils. Those are the brands that I had in my paint box, so I decided to use those. Now, I do want to note that oil dry times across all brands vary a little bit depending on the color, depending a lot on your relative humidity and painting environment, as well as what substrate you're painting on. For this test, I used a piece of Square Arches oil paper. This likely will create a similar absorption rate to something like a very, very smooth canvas or wood, possibly unprimed wood. So a lot of the more absorption you'd get out of a more, like, say, medium textured canvas, the dry times are going to be a little bit probably longer on the paper as a result. So with the added drying medium, everything was surface dry within about 24 to 48 hours. A little bit of variation, but for the most part, surface level dry, thinned out, and brush applied, actually knife applied for all of these. That's really what you're expecting out of that, which is, for the Galkid gel, pretty much base standard across the board. Now for the standard applications, that took a little bit longer and they were a lot more varied between all 6 of these. The RNF stick and sort of a standard, not too thick, but not too thin application, took roughly 7 to 10 days to dry completely, or rather, I would say dry to the touch. Mostly what I was focusing on was touch dry here. The Williamsburg was actually dry within about 36 hours, which is kind of surprising. I think that was the shortest one. The Blue Ridge oils are actually still wet. I was kind of surprised there. Their oil content must be a lot higher. The Gamlen's actually quite similar, as you'll see. The Utrecht, I think, was the second quickest. It was dry to the touch within 2 days, but I would say up to 5 for that additional dry time to really ensure that that's bonded in. The Gamlen's regular application did dry within about 11 days. Absolutely sort of the longest one, and 11 days is a really low generalization there. In fact, I would say it's probably closer to 15. And the Rembrandt kind of averaged out. It's a student-grade oil, and it dried fairly middle-of-the-road surface application in about 4 to 5 days. Now, the sort of extra thick applications, this is where it's going to depend a little bit, and it's probably where you're going to be using the RNF sticks a little bit more. I found that my application and my experience with them, I tend to lay the paint on a lot thicker than I would otherwise. Now, a relatively thick, but still not insanely thick application of the RNF sticks took just a little over 8 days to dry to the touch. I can definitely tell there's still some underlying moisture there. And if I really kind of push on the paint, I can move it around a little bit as well. But as far as touch dry, about a week, a little over a week. My thick application of the Williamsburg, while it was dry to the touch, within about 11 days, I could definitely still move the paint around. It's kind of skinned over, and I could tell that there was still wet paint under that after 11 days. The Blue Ridge oils, after 2 weeks, is still not dry. It's getting there, but definitely still workable. The Utrecht oils, thick application, dry within a week. The Gamlen oils, I haven't even they basically haven't even thought about drying in the thick application. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it's just as wet now as when it came out of the tube. And the Rembrandt oils, again, slightly lesser quality, dry within a week, even on the thick application. So yeah. So again, to run down those ones for the RNF sticks, because I know that was a lot of information and a lot of brands at you all at once. We're talking 24 to 48 hours with the addition, with a thin application on paper with the addition of the Galkit gel drying medium. A fairly standard thin application is going to be roughly 1 to 2 weeks to dry. And exceedingly thick applications, really anywhere from that week and a half point onward. Generally doesn't take longer than the 2 weeks to dry, but again, if you're talking about super thick applications, like really laying that on there, you might be sitting that painting in the corner for a couple of months, honestly. And I know what you're thinking. Where'd you get the months all of a sudden? Where did months come from? This is where months came from. I used those pigment sticks on this piece of slate. Slate is mostly non-absorbent. Some of the underlying grounds that I put on this gave a little bit of absorbency, but not much. I've never done anything with this beyond this. Well, one, because it's really heavy and I do want to cut it down. But two, this took like 6 months to dry. I really laid this on thick, and it looks awesome, but it took way too long to dry. I mean, any oils. If I laid any of these other brands on here this thick, yeah, it would have taken at least 6 months to dry, if not even more. I'm pretty sure at a certain point I did smear on some of that drying stick, which helped. But if you're going to be painting thick like this, just know with oils of any brands, it's going to take a really long time. So it's in your best interest to not apply stuff this thick. Okay, so all of that information aside, what are the pros and cons for these sticks? On the plus side, I find that these sticks are actually a kind of a nice alternative to buying traditional paint tubes. Traditional oil tubes are known to leak. They purge oil over time, pretty much regardless of brand and sometimes regardless of color. It's just the nature of oils. They will kind of leak out of the tubes, which is why I keep my oils in a wooden paint box across the room. The tubes themselves also come inside of these little plastic tubes for safekeeping, as well as for, I guess you could say, freshness. When the paint is dry or you haven't used it in a while, outside of that first initial smear, then it will actually skin over. You just take a Kleenex or a paper towel or something and pull that away to activate that paint. But I can touch this in its dry state, and I'm not getting paint on my hands whatsoever. These are also high-quality artist-grade paints with a fairly wide range of colors to choose from. Granted, there are other companies that have way more colors, but having 6 billion different options isn't always the most useful thing for artists. But the range that exists is quite reasonable, and I find that a lot of the colors really walk a nice line between the modern color palette and the more traditional one. There are colors such as alizarin crimson, but you're looking at modern synthetic variations that mimic those older hues without necessarily using the same fugitive pigments, which is really nice to see for a more modern product. But you do also get more modern colors like cadmiums and cobalts. Another great thing about these paints compared to other oils is that they're actually really, really easy to clean up. Again, these little plastic tubes really come in handy, whether you're using the smaller ones. The bigger ones have a slightly different cap, but all you have to do is just kind of generally wipe this off and just stick it back in the tube. And there you go. Now, if you're using these a lot of the time, a lot more often, smearing around more, doing more abstract stuff, you're probably going to find that the paints get messy. But in terms of cleaning them up, it's really just about wiping them off and shoving them back in the tube. Now, on the downside, these little sticks are, at least in my opinion, kind of expensive. Now, compared to a tube of paint, and especially for some of these bigger ones, the same volume of a tube of paint, they're actually way cheaper. But for the individual investment, they actually are a little bit of money. I originally bought a pack of these 3 earth tone sticks. There was I think some kind of a yellow, a really, really light yellow in these. And they were, I think, like 20 bucks. I think they run like 15, 20 bucks, depending on the colors. The individual sticks start around $12 and kind of go up to maybe the mid-20s, again, depending on color. I think there's paint series 1, 2, 3. These, I think, go up to series 7 or 8, so there are definitely some expensive pigments in the line. So, the standard sticks going, upwards $25, $30 for the really expensive ones. The more larger ones, I think, start around 20, maybe 18 for some of the cheaper earth tone colors, and then upwards of 50, 60 bucks. And then the giant sticks, I think, start around 60. So there's definitely an investment to be made. There are certainly color packs, mixing sets, things like that, the way there would be with any other art supply company, set of 12 or something like that. But those are going to start and range up in the range of like $80 to $120. So it's an investment if you're going to start getting into these. Part of the expense, I find, is that these sticks, because of the addition of the wax and the way it spreads, I grind down these sticks way faster than I ever would go through the same amount of paint in a standard tube. There's just something about the nature of these that they really kind of spread and work out onto your surface way faster. And so you can use them up really quickly and easily, and that's a lot of money down the drain. And the last con, which we've gone over, is the long dry time. Now, that's going to be standard for all oils, but as we saw with my dry time test, there are oils out there, and not just these, different tubes, different brands across the board, that take less time to dry. So if you need something for that extended working time that you would expect out of a standard oil, these are fairly standard for that. But again, as I mentioned with the giant, I don't know where I put that piece, when you lay it down thick, it's going to take a long time for those to dry. So what's my final opinion of these? Well, with anything I review, I definitely get a lot of them before I review them, and I tend to use them for a while. Honestly, I like these, but they're really sort of a niche product. I don't expect you guys to be running out and getting these, but if you're looking to experiment or expand your horizons in terms of painting, specifically oil painting, I definitely consider giving these a try. Despite the cons, I honestly think that these are worth trying at least once. I would say the best way to start is kind of how I did, by getting those little 3-stick starter pack for like 20 bucks or whatever I think I said. It's really interesting to try something that is both a traditional medium that is also in a very non-traditional format. And I think when you start playing with these, you kind of get ideas for yourself about how you might use them for future projects. So with these RNF pigment sticks being a little more off the beaten path when it comes to traditional techniques in painting, I'm curious if, one, you guys have even heard of these, and two, if you've tried them and used them yourself. Because I use them for a kind of a different purpose in my work, to oftentimes spread down weird, interesting backdrops for other pieces, I'm curious if anyone out there has used them in the more traditional sense to create something more realistic than at least what I do with them. So in whatever way that this video may have piqued your interest for this product, let me know your thoughts and comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this or learned something about the product itself. By the way, I'm not sponsored when I do one of these. I'm buying all this stuff, and this is all out of my own pocket, just letting you know. Get subscribed if you're not already for more product reviews like this for different kinds of art supplies. There's a whole playlist for them here on the channel. Thanks guys for watching. Keep on creating, and this has been from Cinder Studios. See you guys next time. Oh, right. This community Discord in the description box. I completely forgot to plug that now. Okay. Yeah, check that out too. Cool community. I share a lot of inspiring stuff over there. Plus new art.